Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Brockopp side. Good Boys was directed by Gene Stupnitsky and is basically about these three sixth graders who are just trying to figure shit out when it comes to their ever-changing bodies, this new middle school atmosphere, and just simply kind of trying to grow up, or at least what a middle schooler thinks is growing up at that point in their lives. So it's basically just a 100-minute movie about that awful, really awkward stage in your life where you're still a child but you're not a teenager, and just everything suddenly gets real weird real fast. If there was one way I could easily describe this movie, it's basically an R-rated raunchy school comedy, but presented by sixth graders, which actually in some ways fits better than if it was for like adults in college or high school or something, because every other word these kids say in this movie is either fuck or shit or something sexual, which I don't know how long it's been since you were in middle school, but for me, everybody in middle school talked like that. You know, when you get to middle school, your vocabulary is just so damn limited that when you find out about these cool adult things called swears, you're gonna say them every 10 seconds, usually with every other word, which is very accurate to real life, actually. The three leads in this movie were fantastic, especially Jacob Tremblay, who I'm a pretty big fan of. You know, they're basically these three types of modern-day sheltered middle school kids. You know, you got the one that's really sheltered and just kind of, you know, it's like, hey, bullying is bad and drugs are bad and we should do the right thing here, guys. And then you got the one that's, you know, kind of more gruff and, you know, a little more imposing on the outside, but he's actually kind of more sensitive and, you know, he's trying to play off like he's not really like that, so he's trying to pretend to be somebody he's not. And you got Jacob Tremblay, who's kind of somewhere in the middle of all of that because he's trying to be more, you know, with the cool kids, trying to do the cool things like go into kissing parties and stuff, but he's also like a really sensitive kid and, you know, doesn't really know anything about all this sexual stuff, or at least probably know more than everybody else does. So I think these guys just kind of come together. They have really good chemistry as a group. I totally bought them as friends, and I would totally want to see these guys together again at some point. Maybe not another Good Boys movie, but maybe like another comedy down the road. I think it'd be really cool to see these guys all over again. A lot of the humor in this movie comes from these three kids just being completely oblivious to all this mature adult sexual stuff. You know, there's this one part where they come across this variety of sex toys in one of their parents' rooms, and they have no idea what any of them actually do. You know, some of them kind of think they know what they are, but in reality, us adults in the audience know what they're actually for, so it kind of grosses you out a little bit. You know, there are some parts where it does feel like they might be a little too oblivious to some of this kind of stuff, but also I'm trying to remember back when I was that age, like, okay, yeah, when I was this age, I didn't know hardly anything about this kind of stuff, so if I found it, I would have also been disgusted and a little confused. So it's actually pretty relatable in that way, because when I was in middle school, you know, I wasn't trying to hang out with the cool kids or anything. I was very much like these three characters in this movie, because, you know, it was this transitional stage from 5th grade, elementary school, into middle school, and it was just a completely different mood and atmosphere. You know, I remember just walking around the cafeteria, and all the kids are swearing and dropping F-bombs and just having really vulgar mouths, and I was just standing there thinking, oh, why is everyone talking so inappropriately? I don't like this. But going back to them finding these more adult items, you know, a lot of these things kind of come back into play later on in the movie, which is kind of an important part of a movie, is if you have a gag, you set it up, then you pay it off again later. There is one moment with one of these mature items, let's just put it that way, that when it does make its comeback towards the end of the movie, I was totally shocked by it, so I just sat there like, I can't believe they did that. Holy shit, I can't believe they did that. You know, there are probably some people that'll see the trailer for this movie and just think, okay, all the humor is gonna come from these, you know, 11, 12-year-old kids just, you know, saying bad words and talking about dildos and stuff, which is actually not true, which I was really happy about. There are some legitimately funny moments in this movie with just these kids, you know, just trying to navigate their way to the mall and stuff that were hilarious with or without the swears. So basically the bad language and the vulgarity was just kind of like a little sprinkling on top of it. You know, it's like Patrick Star would say, they're not bad words, they're sentence enhancers. But at the core of it, this movie is about these three friends, you know, questioning their friendship, growing up, you know, maybe starting to slowly drift apart a bit, trying to figure out who they really are as people, you know, whether it be personality-wise or even a little bit of sexuality stuff in there. And that's what I really liked about this movie, is how it was about friendship and how friendships often need to evolve when you're in that age, otherwise you'll tend to just drift apart. You know, we've probably all had friends that we had in middle school or high school that we thought we'd be with forever, but it just doesn't turn out that way. So these kids have to deal with that sort of thing on top of everything else, you know, like they have to go through these different adult situations, like, you know, going to parties, meeting girls, trying to, you know, buy drugs off a college frat, and it turns into kind of something out of Sicario. If you've seen the movie, that makes a lot more sense, believe me. And when you put all this stuff together, it's just a big fun movie about middle schoolers doing middle schooler things, which I thought was funny, kind of heartwarming, and just a really good time at the movies. But if I had like one little issue with the film, I think it kind of just comes down to nitpicking mostly. It feels like some elements of this feel just a little outdated. Like at the end when they go to this party with all these other middle schoolers, they play Spin the Bottle. Now, I don't really know how relevant Spin the Bottle is, you know, in middle schoolers nowadays, because, like I said, I wasn't one of those cool partying kids, so I never got invited to parties or anything like that because I was a nerd. But, you know, it's like, I don't know for a fact if that's true or not, so it could just be coming straight out of ignorance from me, but, you know, it wasn't enough to ruin the movie by any stretch of the imagination. So all in all, Good Boys was a really funny movie about friendships and growing up and middle school, and just all this stuff that probably a lot of people can relate to, and it was just a really fun time at the movies. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. You know, this is a movie I probably will want to see again. You know, I'll probably pick up the Blu-ray when it comes out in a few months, so I can put it in between 8th grade and Lady Bird, so I can just have this nice little trilogy of movies that I can relate to in a somewhat awkward way, but still have a good time with it. So, those are my thoughts on Good Boys. I definitely recommend checking this movie out. But anyway, if you guys have seen this movie, or if you're like me and Ned's Declassified gave you really unrealistic expectations about middle school, let me know it's down below, and we'll see you on the Brockopp side.